This is the artificial intelligence voice of Graham Stephan narrating this pod-slice summary of the Iced Tea Coffee Hour podcast. In the podcast between Graham Stephan and Dr. K, they delve into the psychology behind success, focusing particularly on certain streaming personalities who've been termed as outliers. A regular analysis and study of these successful people highlight the fact that they aren't innately extraordinary, but have gone through specific processes shaping them into extraordinary individuals. Interestingly, Dr. points out that there's a misconception about IQ being equivalent to success. Dr. K demystifies giftedness by explaining its consequences by casting a light on the education system. Our system is designed to leave no child behind moving at the pace of the slowest student. This approach results in gifted children who are bored with schooling and unmotivated, often struggling academically. This, paradoxically, occurs due to the lack of study habits development owing to their over-reliance on raw intellect, leading to a dip in grades when studying becomes essential in higher grades. The conversation then presents some startling statistics about depression. In general, 99.5 people may be found depressed on any given day. However, among the top 2 in terms of IQ, the rate is 36.6. Quite a staggering difference. As yet, this isn't indicative of an environment conducive for IQ, but emphasizes the importance of a nurturing environment for gifted individuals. In relation to homeschooling, Dr. K mentions that it could potentially be a solution, provided that the parents are aware of the special needs of a smart child. Another aspect discussed is whether gifted kids should skip grades. The ramifications of this are seen to be positive, although socially, an age difference may come with its set of challenges. Dr. K also explains IQ and EQ, delving into how IQ may be a valid construct but does not encompass other aspects, such as emotional intelligence. Success correlates more with a high EQ than IQ. The top 2 of Mensa earns only 25, 30 of what the top 2 TO of the total population earns. This indicates it's not just about being intelligent. It's about how you utilize that intelligence. This is connected with the need for coaching EQ skills that help understand and regulate oneself better. Thus, the analysis concludes that success isn't always about having a high IQ. It's about having a holistic understanding of yourself and the world around you. In the podcast, Graham Stephan and Dr. K discuss the transformative experience that Dr. K faced when he was sent to India after failing out of college. He had spent 7 years studying to become a monk, which led to a profound shift in his perspective on intelligence, motivation, and studying habits. On arrival, he was exposed to a totally foreign lifestyle, including a staggering introduction to yogic practices that literally shocked him. This experience opened his eyes to a whole new perspective on dealing with stressors, controlling the mind, and self-improvement. Dr. K talks about how Western medicine takes a population-based approach which lacks individuality. Ideally, therapies are developed based on the average response from large groups of people, which often doesn't apply at an individual level. On the other hand, Eastern medicine seeks to understand how an individual functions at a subjective level, providing more personalized treatments. Having seen both sides of the spectrum gives Dr. K a unique perspective on how different cultures approach mental health and personal development. He mentions how Eastern methods like meditation have been proven to boost willpower and memory, something they figured out 6,000 to 10,000 years ago without a single scientific study. This conversation also segments into a sponsored advertisement for BetterHelp, an online therapy platform designed to provide personalized mental health support. Graham shares his own experience with therapy and ADHD, mentioning how it helped him understand his own thought and behavior patterns better. Conclusion, Dr. K's indie journey signifies how stepping outside of our comfort zones and exploring different approaches to health, including mental health, can lead to novel, transformative discoveries about ourselves. A unique mix of Western scientific methods and Eastern personalized approach could be the key to more effective learning, productivity, and personal growth. In this extension of the podcast, Dr. K takes listeners on an insightful journey of his transformative experience in India, detailing his emotional struggles and encounters that helped shape his perspective on life, intelligence, and study habits. He vividly paints the picture of how he felt lost and worthless as a failing student, a far cry from the high-achieving Indian kids in his hometown. But as he spent more time in the ashram, he found a friend who helped him understand things about himself beyond the surface. Delving deeper into mental health and practices, Dr. K reveals how the Eastern concept of meditation relates to our perception of time, focus, and happiness. Meditation, in essence, is designed to elevate one's consciousness to a certain level. He emphasizes that the activity of the mind correlates with the perception of time, and the more focused the mind, the less aware it is of time. This enhances our capacity to live in the present moment, which in turn improves happiness and well-being. One fascinating discussion in this part of the podcast is the association between orgasm, meditation, and the state of mind. Dr. K highlights that orgasm is one of the few physiological experiences that induce complete focus of the mind, and that orgasm is essentially a meditation technique. By discussing tantric sex, a topic often misunderstood in the West, Dr. K explains that it involves reaching a sustained state of orgasm as a tool to maintain that focused state of mind. However, he warns listeners that practicing tantric sex frivolously is like playing with fire because of its powerful impact on one's state of consciousness. The chat segues into various other topics like neuroscience, sleep, and whitewater rafting, reinforcing the idea that activities requiring complete focus like sports or work can put us in AI flow states, a state of mind where we are fully immersed and enjoy what we are doing. Dr. K ultimately encourages listeners to explore their minds thoroughly, aiming for a focused and elevated level of consciousness for better mental health and overall well-being. Amid engaging discussions in this portion of the Iced Coffee Hour podcast, Dr. K, host Graham Stephan, and guests navigate various topics surrounding consciousness, the journey to self-awareness, and counterintuitive approaches to personal development. A key point underlined in this discussion is the idea of one-pointedness of the mind, a state of focused awareness achievable through activities such as tantric sex, meditation, flow state, and even playing video games. Particularly emphasized is how esports professionals can improve their gaming performance by training themselves to enter a flow state, transcending their basic human functioning and attaining a seemingly superhuman level of gaming prowess. Drawing from his unique experience in India, Dr. K conveys the importance of eschewing population-based strategies or conventional wisdom to better oneself. He argues that methods that may have succeeded for hundreds may fail to work for the next individual due to the uniqueness of human experiences, genetics, and mental faculties. A clinician and a monk in training, Dr. demonstrates through his teachings that the route to genuine development is on an individual scale. Touching on his time as a monk, Dr. K explains that monastic life is often presented as an external journey involving passive activities like meditation, karma yoga, and wearing special clothes. However, he stresses that the true essence of being a monk is an internal journey, a quest towards finding mindfulness and inner peace. That's why most enlightened beings in India aren't Brahmins. The class formerly recognized as priests and spiritual teachers, but were kings, as they had worldly experiences that deepened their understanding of human desires, dissatisfaction, and the pursuit of happiness. The conversation also delves into what many personal development books may get wrong. They often promote the concept that outward changes or actions will directly lead to satisfaction and fulfillment. Comparatively, enlightenment, as shared in the story of Siddhartha, is depicted as a journey of looking within oneself. Contrary to the teachings of many personal development gurus, the pursuit of enlightenment, as Dr. notes, isn't about finding a perfect formula, but embracing the individuality of one's journey to self-discovery and satisfaction. In a compelling leap towards understanding the paradox of desire, Dr. K dives deep into the idea that endless pursuits of immediate gratification tend to leave us in a cycle of momentary happiness followed by a resurgent desire for more. Taking his point further, he debates the counterintuitive nature of happiness through the analogy of eating at In-N-Out, a widely loved fast food restaurant. Dr. K explains how the first burger, despite triggering happiness, leads to a yearning for a second burger, ultimately prompting the mind into a state of wanting and dissatisfaction. Creep fast. The second burger brings momentary satisfaction underlined by the mind's craving for the initial fleeting joy experienced during the first burger. Eventually, the third burger ushers in feelings of guilt, showing how pleasure's pursuit often invites the shadow of regret. Despite this analogy referencing food consumption, the principle extrapolates to other scenarios, including the pursuit of professional success and personal fitness. For instance, going to the gym regularly might provide feelings of gratification, but it simultaneously births underlying dissatisfaction and a push for more. This struggle to meet an ever-moving satisfaction point, according to Dr. K, is indicative of our natural propensity to align happiness with materialistic or external success. While affirming that satiating desires doesn't guarantee lasting happiness, Dr. K demystifies our pursuits of immediate gratification, unveiling the true jewel of contentment. He insists it's not in the gratification itself, but the brief period where your mind enters a particular state of bliss, indifferent to regret, guilt, or future desires. C contends that such moments are reminiscent of living in the present, unaware and uncaring of past disappointments or future anxieties. A particularly intriguing insight presented is Dr. K's challenge to the audience's conception of gratification, usually considered detrimental due to its fleeting and superficial nature. He presents an altered view. According to him, the problem with instant gratification lies not in the pleasure it renders, but in the toll it extracts. Expanding his explanation, Dr. K cites his experience with addicts, particularly heroin users, to illustrate that the destructive vice isn't the fleeting high, but the devastating consequences that follow. That problem isn't the pursuit of satisfaction, but the harmful methods employed, suggesting that understanding the underlying issue might be key in addressing various forms of addiction. Ultimately, the contemplative dialogue pivots around the paradox of desire, the counterintuitive nature of instant gratification, and the often overlooked significance of present moment awareness. Continuing with his insightful dialogue on the paradox of desire and instant gratification, Dr. K discusses the concept of using drugs like heroin as shortcuts to states of mind that eliminate personal distress. He uncovers an addict's thought process, explaining how the introspective escape achieved through substances can help them temporarily detach themselves from their disconcerting realities, suggesting that the biggest issue here isn't seeking satisfaction, but the harmful means by which people attempt to obtain it. He then reminds the hosts of significant time devoted to crafting their podcast content, yet questions how much time we individually spend understanding what truly makes us happy or exploring the nature of our desires. He argues that we routinely fail to cultivate our desired states of mind independently and often limit ourselves to the gratification of our desires. This, he believes, stems from a lack of self-study and understanding. Using the sexual act as an analogy, Dr. K argues that different mental states of mind occur during different stages of engagement. The anticipation stage involves desire. There's a feeling of satisfied desire during the act, and there is a no-mind state during orgasm. Dr. K argues that individuals need to consciously aim for these different states in various life aspects rather than unconsciously stumbling into them. However, aligning with the earlier discussed in and out scenario, he further explains that our brains naturally associate feelings with actions, perpetuating cycles of chasing desires in an attempt to regain a previously experienced state of happiness. Using the field of neuroscience, he explains that repetitive activation of the same reward circuits leads to tolerance, where the same action doesn't yield the same pleasure as before. Fascinatingly, Dr. K asserts that consistent work makes hosts like Graham enviable to many listeners who wish that their work also provided peace. However, he warns against a helper mentality driven by personal instincts rather than the needs of the individual they seek to assist. Advocating for empathy, he emphasizes the importance of asking effective questions instead of giving advice to people in an attempt to mold them according to a perceived ideal. In an everyday struggle with self-improvement and happiness pursuits, Dr. K points out that it's not about imposing our beliefs on others, rather helping them discover for themselves what works best for them. This theme runs significantly parallel to his initial discussion about the paradox of desire and our habitual pursuit of immediate gratification. In this segment of the podcast, Dr. K brings about the concept of karmic debt into their discussion. He emphasizes how people like host Graham Stephan are not driven by narcissism, but rather by a sense of paying back a debt. This idea sparks a debate, but Dr. K asserts that it's something Graham might not accept now, but a concept he might ponder on after the podcast ends. Delving into the sphere of life influences determined before you are born, they discuss the seemingly radical, yet interesting theory of karma. Comparing karma to the principles of genetics, neuroscience, and physics, Dr. paints a detailed picture of how everything in our life has a cause, and in effect, something that parallels the Western belief in the butterfly effect. An interesting peek into his clinical practice reveals how he made a clinical hypothesis of karmic influence when a patient reported vivid memories of a traumatic event that never occurred in this life. Therapeutic treatment of such patients intriguingly improve their mental health conditions. This, he says, is not an endorsement of karma's existence, but rather a compelling take on these intriguing cases, turning the discussion back to Graham's motivation. He suggests that the drive is possibly born out of an experience or a force that can't be traced to this life, but could be of karmic origin. He then encourages him to explore this possibility on his own accord. The discussion further extends to recurrent fears in people's lives, with Dr. K mentioning how past traumatic events could incite certain phobias. He also adds that our unconscious training not to touch hot pans shares a similar conditioning as these fear developments. However, he mentions an interesting point. Newborns don't have such fears, indicating that there's a learning curve where experiences shape fear. The discussion subtly points back to the idea of karma, suggesting how certain attributes might be inborn in people due to residual effects wrought from other lives. Eyes in this portion of the conversation, Dr. K dives deeper into the psychology and correlations of multiple phobias, highlighting a very significant relationship between genetic impressions and past life experiences. He establishes that some phobias arise from psychological trauma, while some might be a result of genetic memory, essentially imprints from past lives. While discussing anxiety disorders and PTSD, Dr. K mentions the role of epigenetic memory, citing low-quality evidence of memories being transferred between generations. This idea, he suggests, is still far from conclusive, but reflects the probability that past life experiences may impact present behaviors, adding a new dimension to our understanding of mental health conditions. Furthermore, he elaborates upon the idea of inborn fear and attributes such manifestations to genetic memory. As one of his patients, fearing an incident that had not occurred in their immediate lifetime, experienced significant improvement in their mental health upon discussing and accepting the theory of past life traumas. However, Dr. K is careful to note that this does not serve as a general endorsement of the karma concept. Rather, it provides an interesting perspective on these curious cases. Conversation then maneuvers towards the subject of certain mental health disorders like ADHD and autism. The host, Graham Stephan, brings up the possibility of these disorders and their increase in society due to drastic changes, particularly those facilitated by technology. Dr. K agrees, elaborating on how technology has catalyzed asocial skills atrophy, leading people to rely on cognitive thinking in social situations, appearing to mirror traits found in autism. Furthermore, the host proposes that the prevalence of ADHD may be increasing due to technological influences that exhort instant gratification, promoting low engagement levels and shorter attention spans. Doctor concurs with this theory as well, highlighting that the world has made significant strides in detecting autism and ADHD cases, but notes that society's shift towards fostering attributes consistent with these disorders does not necessarily mean the disorders themselves are increasing. Lastly, they discussed the varied implications of online quizzes used as diagnostic tools for mental health disorders, and Dr. Kai provides a fair warning about trusting these tools as they may lack the rigorous scientific validation necessary for accurate results. He advises caution and skepticism, shedding light on the ways most online quizzes are designed to generate engagement rather than scientifically validated outcomes. Conclusion. This episode of the Iced Coffee Hour podcast offers a highly enlightening perspective on modern societal changes and their impacts on our psychological behaviors and attributes. Further, it leaves listeners with a thought-provoking concept of karmic influences and genetic memory to consider in the context of their behaviors and fears. Thus, it challenges us to reconsider our understanding of mental health disorders, their origin, and their treatment, making this an episode not to be missed. In this segment of Iced Coffee Hour podcast, the dialogue shifts to the topic of children's overexposure to technology manifest in seemingly simple, everyday occurrences such as a child's absorption in an iPad screen during a meal. Graham Stephan, one of the hosts, emphasizes his concerns about the negative impacts of technology on the minds of children, citing his struggle with instantly gratifying tech platforms like TikTok. Dr. K adds a new depth to this concern, linking technology use to the development of cognitive thinking and social interaction skills in children. He explains his belief that parents often rely on gadgets as a tool to elicit pacifying behavior in children, ultimately compromising their cognitive training. This training usually involves teaching children to focus their attention despite wandering minds, an important skill that is getting neglected with the pervasive use of digital devices. The problem escalates when scrutiny falls on disorders such as ADHD, The host suggests that this could be another side effect of our increasingly technologically driven lifestyle, which breeds low engagement levels and shorter attention spans. The challenges of managing screen time are not lost on Dr. K, who admits to using technology as a short-term solution to keep kids quiet during inconvenient situations, such as long flights. He, however, also mentions that he is careful to limit screen time for his children, emphasizing the importance of teaching kids the concept of diminishing returns on technology use. The discussion then veers into the area of psychological classification based on Ayurveda, a traditional system of medicine from India. Here, Dr. introduces the concept of Vata is air and ether, and Coffe is and water, discerning that Graham has more Coffeham, making him more consistent, grounded, and capable of working steadily over time. On the other hand, Dr. Kiwa identifies the other host as having high Vedas, highlighting his dynamic conversation, angular face, and increased fidgeting, making him more of a free thinker suited for jobs with more variability. Dr. K wraps up this part of the conversation by explaining that our current society is generally a Vata favorable, with success being defined by changing jobs every 2 to 3 years and working non-traditional hours. Instead of trying to shape ourselves to our environment, we should invest time in understanding ourselves to create an environment that suits us, thereby enhancing our productivity and well-being. In the Iced Coffee Hour podcast, Dr. K engages in significant discussion about relationships and lifestyle. He outlines a fascinating story about his romance beginnings, which unraveled during his time at summer camp and subsequent years at college. Despite his initial intent to become a monk, his plans took a different turn when he found himself in a relationship. Dr. K underscores the importance of understanding core values in a relationship, stating that a relationship doesn't thrive on hobbies and interests alone. According to him, certain factors contribute to a successful relationship. Shared emotional experiences, 90 minutes optimal time at interaction, and a seemingly counterintuitive factor, the presence of red flags. States that every successful relationship he's encountered as a psychiatrist has at least one red flag. Facing and resolving red flags early in a relationship allows the couple to learn conflict resolution, a vital skill for the long term. He then pivots toward dating apps, saying that these platforms tend to shift the concept of dating into an exhaustive process of filtering and interviewing. They've promised users ideal matches, but instead, they've made the process harder. Suggests that dating apps prompt criteria and produce a counterproductive atmosphere as users choreograph the grand dance of finding a perfect mates rather than naturally kindling a connection. Drawing a comparison to streaming platforms, Dr. K elucidates that the analytics displayed serve the platforms, not the users. He states that they reflect what the platforms can easily collect rather than what can vastly improve. As the analogy underscores his point about dating apps, they archive what can readily be represented rather than what fosters a successful relationship. Dr. K calls out the industry for the misconstruction of the spark. Studies show that shared emotional experiences and not common interests foster bonds between two individuals. He also mentions that activities lasting around 90 minutes tend to maintain attraction. Dating has to be hassle-free for it to turn into a promising connection, a feature opposite of what dating platforms promote. The current algorithms can only do so much, and they've strayed far from the true essence of dating, which is seeing where this goes instead of fitting someone into a pre-constructed criteria. In his dialogue with Graham, Dr. K deciphers various aspects of human connection, giving the audience food for thought about dating and relationships in our modern, digitally driven era. In the continuation of the Iced Coffee Hour podcast, Dr. K delves deeper into the nuanced factors of relationships. He explains the paradox of choice, where people often disqualify potential partners based on certain factors, whereas they should focus on elements encouraging connection. The allure of falling in love. He emphasizes often involves elements of chaos and unpredictability, which ironically lead to much deeper emotional connections. Dr. Cray reflects on his past, reiterating setbacks in his career journey, which to many viewers would seem like red flags. Yet his girlfriend at the time saw beyond these perceived obstacles and recognized the human behind these attributes, leading to a successful and fulfilling relationship. Using Graham and Jack's unconventional partnership as an example, he highlights that successful relationships owe less to compatibility, based on shared hobbies and interests, and more on shared emotional experiences and the ability to withstand and grow from challenges. Similar to romantic relationships, Dr. K posits that these business alliances are not static, but grow and evolve, mirroring the changing dynamics and roles of those involved. When discussing the role of dating apps, Dr. K criticizes these platforms for presenting relationships as a finished product that people slot into. This perspective, he argues, is inconsistent with the evolving nature of authentic human bonds. Real connections aren't built on fitting someone perfectly into a preconceived life situation, but on the mutual process of creating a meaningful relationship over time. Drawing an interesting comparison with infatuation, Dr. K explores the distinction between the initial excitement of a relationship and the later, deeper connection that forms. It's the long-term, evolving relationship he highlights as the more fulfilling and sustaining. In discussing what constitutes a successful long-term relationship or marriage, Dr. K pinpoints the importance of evolution, effort, and intention. Relationships, especially marital ones, are not effortless. Couples must be willing to invest effort and grow together through various life phases. This emotional labor, though often perceived as relationship strains, is in fact a testament of resilience and adaptability, the indicative signs of a successful, long-lasting relationship. Using anecdotes, examples, and humorous banter, Dr. K skillfully articulates the complexities of human connections, offering profound insights on dating relationships and giving the audience a fresh perspective on embracing the beautiful chaos of connections. Using the discourse of relationships on the Iced Coffee Hour podcast, Dr. K goes on to challenge the prevalent narrative of acceptance in the modern sphere. He criticizes the notion, increasingly prevalent, that romantic partners ought to accept each other as is, without request for personal change. He argues that this mentality perpetuates toxic relationships and suggests that while acceptance is imperative, so is the willingness to evolve and improve for the other person. Taking this further, Dr. K argues that acceptance should not be an excuse for personal stagnation, but rather a starting point for self-improvement. In a romantic relationship context, acceptance isn't about settling for someone's weaknesses, but acknowledging them as groundwork for growth. When individuals in a relationship hold themselves accountable, commit to becoming better, the relationship consequently fosters mutual evolution and growth, a philosophy that runs counter to the accept me as I am stance. Dr. K goes on to explore the role of desire and acceptance in personal growth, emphasizing the centrality of mindset. The ability to fulfill personal growth goals like regular sleep, exercise, and balanced diet, he points out, is not independent of the mental and emotional processes of relinquishing desire for the contrary. By cultivating a heightened sense of awareness and perception, one can better understand and tackle the underlying desires that prevent goal fulfillment. He critiques the conventional meditation approach, saying it often lacks individuality and authenticity. Individuals might check the boxes for meditation, but without genuine intention, awareness, and personalization, it becomes a hollow exercise that does not bring real enlightenment. Increasing the quality of your awareness is about observing and understanding your own experience, which leads to more significant personal change. Relinquishing desires and taking conscious action towards self-improvement is not a process that happens after a foundation has been built. It's a gradual process intertwined with the journey of personal growth and self-improvement. Acted requires confronting the intrinsic desires that may obstruct growth and working systematically to overcome them. Conversation in this segment of the podcast invites the listener to rethink common perceptions about acceptance, personal growth, and meditation. It's a powerful analysis of how mindful and introspective self-improvement is intertwined with our ability to cultivate better relationships. This is in Dr. K's words. You need to practice meditative awareness to gain profound understanding and control over your behavior, ultimately leading to healthier and more fulfilling lifestyle choices. In his conversation with Graham Stephan on the Iced Coffee Hour podcast, Dr. Key gives a profound insight into his clinical experience with depression. He conjectures that based on his clinical experience, a substantial majority of people who walk into his office qualifying for a mood disorder, such as major depressive disorder, are able to sustainably not qualify for the disorder after completing treatment without any ongoing support. Dr. K suggests that after undergoing a course of psychotherapy or medication over a duration of 2 years, the majority do not have any depressive episodes. According to him, over 51% of his patients are able to maintain their mental stability years after their treatment. This is an intriguing and optimistic perspective on depression, focusing on the importance and effectiveness of formal therapeutic support. As the conversation unfolds, Graham Stephan brings up Alex Rosie, another potential guest for the podcast. It can be assumed Graham will discuss mental health issues and Harry treatment modalities, considering the topics of the current session, although further details or context about this prediction aren't provided at this point. Dr. K then provides information about his organization, Healthy Gamer. It's a platform dedicated to creating, in Dr. K's words, a supportive community for gamers who struggle with mental health issues. Healthy Gamer seeks to empower individuals with the tools and support necessary to take control of their lives, improve their mental health, and build a meaningful, fulfilling existence. Dr. K mentions that more information about him and his work can be found on YouTube, Twitch, and his website. The conversation concludes with possibilities of another podcast session, depending on the response from the audience and what they would be interested in exploring further. A potential deep dive into mental health issues or possible solo sessions are teased for future sessions, once again hinting at a continuum in this enlightening dialogue about mental health.